Mayan Mexico. The Maya people. The Maya people believed that death and life were cycled, like the seasons and astronomical cycles. They believed that the physical world was unavoidably tied to the supernatural world of the gods. These cycles had no limits and no ends. But in this cycle, they believed that in order to remain as an elite class of the gods, they had to perform very tedious rituals. One of them was called bloodletting. Bloodletting was a form of self-mutilation where they cut or pierced earlobes, tongues, or the penis with ceremonial tools. Special blades and stingray spines. They would put the blood in a bowl and mix it with bark paper. And then they burned this stained paper. And the smoke that was created from the blood of kings and their families was sent into the energy skyward towards the gods, even closer to the stars as possible. This represented divine power of the leaders who had direct communication with the gods. Some of the rituals, like human sacrifice, did not even originate with the Maya. Most of the sacrificing people rituals actually came from the warlike influence of the Toltecs, who believed in the greatest warriors would be brought to the gods. The Toltecs would only sacrifice great and powerful animals that were not people. I mean, we're already animals, but back then they didn't believe people were animals. Animals like turkeys, dogs, squirrels, bears, the strongest thing they could kill to represent their strength as the sacrifice. And then later in life, the greatest thing that you could kill or overcome was your own self. So they sacrificed themselves to the gods as not a request, but as a demand from the gods. The gods demanded that people sacrifice themselves because they believed, the gods told them that sacrificing yourself is the greatest enemy that you could defeat, the greatest form of royalty and power, and the only way to overcome positions that, like prisoners, slaves, or wrongs that have been done that are justified as wrong by the gods that have set up the sort of society that they lived in. And the Mayans had no problem with sacrificing people to communicate with the spirit world and the gods, who were believed to control who goes in or out of the spirit world or the afterlife. And it was only the kings and the priests that also had supernatural powers like the gods from spending time learning from the gods. Another facet of the Maya were ball game, a similar sport to soccer, where two teams were pitted against each other in a stone court, where in this time it was a much more holy and spiritually honorable place to play in, for only people with the proper bloodline, with the proper right, could play in a game where they stood on something that represented earth and man standing above it, which separated them in a fight, in a competition against each other to overcome what they stand on, that they believed everything beneath them was the underworld. In these games, whoever lost was sacrificed and sent to the gods to be done with however the gods wished to do with them. Possibly eat them. And the ones who win were set to a fate to send others to lose and be sent to the gods. And in this vicious, brutal fight, where some people even died during the match, it was actually the gods who determined who wins, no matter how many points you get. It was more about how you performed than it was how many points you made. That determined which team wins. The same thing was practiced in Egypt in a different form of the manner. The Maya believed that any death you had to go through the underworld to reach any sort of light or enlightenment of knowledge in an afterlife. And death from natural causes was undesired, because to die from natural causes would mean that you wouldn't die in a holy place. You'd die in some random place that you wouldn't know about. They believed in killing themselves off, basically. The Mayans' book, Popolvuh, states men came down to earth from the stars, knowing everything, and they examined the four corners of the sky and the earth's round surface. In this book, like many other books written about their deities, they begin to talk about the creation of man. Their creation of man was from the 3 water-dwelling feathered serpents, meaning serpents that came out of the water, USOs, unidentified submerged objects. But wait, didn't I just say that the gods came from the skies? And it's written like that directly in their book. Those are the first words in there. Well, by water dwelling, they meant that when they came down to earth, they stayed in the water. Which is why that after discussing the creation, how they believed that man was, how they were told by these gods that man was created, which I'm not going to even bother to go into detail because it involves corn and bullshit. But furthermore, about the water dwelling is more significant, because now they're discovering ancient temples of sacrifice and burial chambers are being found underwater. How is this possible? Ancient roadways that go into the water. Now, the Mayans believed in performing very detailed rituals that involved these temples on land and off land as a form of guiding man into the afterlife by going through the gates of hell. And by putting the temples underwater, it was making them as close to hell as possible. And by building large, tall temples on the highest parts of land that were the most sturdy and flat, you were creating the closest way to heaven, the closest way to the gods, the stars, as close to the stars as possible. One of the most popular discoveries is it's off of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, where archaeologists found a labyrinth filled with stone temples and pyramids. According to Mayan legends and Mayan of their followings, the souls of the dead had to follow a dog with night vision. It was able to see in the night, a dog that can see in the night, on a horrific and watery path, and endured many dangerous challenges before they could rest in the afterlife. Known as the Anunnaki. And in this underworld, each of these sacrifices were greatly difficult for the Anunnaki to get. And in one such story, some sacrifices actually escaped. And one of the great stories that is most popular is called the Hero Twins, Hanapu and Exbalake. A boy named Hanapu was summoned to Xibalba for playing a game too noisily while they were disputing with the tribe leaders. And in the legend, Hanapu's head is placed in a calabash tree. The skull is later found by a girl named Exkuik, whose hand gets poked by the head and is then became impregnated. She is the daughter of their lord Exbalib, and she flees to the Lord. She goes home. Unable to do anything about it, she gives birth to the Hero Twins, Hanapu and Exbalaki. And they become very destructive, in which they're summoned to Xibalba to speak with the gods, where they outwit the lords and ascend into the night sky as constellations. So basically they stole their ship and they flew off. Things like this could happen because, well, they did happen because the Anunnaki were very strict, and it is written in the Quiche book, the Popova, that they set up councils and they arranged meetings and they had a council book, and everything had to be accounted for in order to convert man into a greater enlightened beings, trying to please their own Quetzal feathers that were blue and green. The quote, plumbed serpents spoke of the fourfolding sides, cornering, measuring, fourfolding stacks, stretching and halving the sky. Halving, like cutting in half. They had told these people that the world was flat, that it had four sides, four corners, as said by the makers, molders, mother, father of life, of humankind, giver of breath, giver of heart, bearer, upbringer in the light, begotten in the light, warrior, knower of everything, whatever there is, sky, earth, lake, sea. It's written just like that. And they state that as they leave with the hurricanes across the sea, they will one day return. When they were here, they were not all of the same age. One was a child, a newborn of the other two. He was called Thunder. So not all of the three were adults, as someone may imagine, but rather a family here to make a change in one of our societies and help bring them up to being as one of the most advanced of that generation that was by sea. Most great civilizations were by water. And their last words to the people that were told as spoken, speak, pray to us, keep our days. Nothing more was said. They wanted us to be misled and confused, stuck believing a mixture of real science and false hopes, false hoaxes and hopes and gifts that ultimately only hurt us. If they had never even came here, we probably would have been better off. And it is now when I come to my point that there are several different religions. Because at one point, when there were belief in the gods, the several different races involved in the growth of man, the several different beliefs began to overlap each other and have now created a mess that we do not need, which is why I say we don't need things like the Bible. Although the Bible has transformed into a way for people to cope with their problems, it is still believing in misled information. It is believing in broken riddles that lead to a misunderstanding of the world, which is why it should be rid of. We don't need it. We shouldn't have it. It is just a reminder of how screwed up we used to be. Honestly, if you lived out in the woods your entire life, and then all of a sudden you saw something you could not believe possible, and you couldn't explain, and it came down and it gave you an explanation for everything, would you take its explanation, or would you believe that it's lying to you? Of course, at the time, they obviously believed it. Who wouldn't? If the Greys abducted somebody and told them that everybody was going to be killed in 2012, then everybody would believe it. Which is why they try to stay out of everything. Ricky's been told by them that they try to stay out. They don't want to be involved. He doesn't know why. But somehow they have to be here as an obligation of some sort. We need to figure things out on our own. Which is why in that spit it out. What is it called? In that crop circle where it showed the gray face and it said, "Beware the bearers of false gifts." They mean that if any more races come and they start presenting us situations the same as what the Mayans went through, where they were given lots of information and knowledge about the universe, and yet they were given misleading information along with it. They were bearers of false gifts. They were given bearers of false gifts, and that's something we need to be aware of coming back. Because if the Greys end up in another war, and more troops are sent over here to go ahead and start installing information into our way of society, we have to be able to deny it and fight back. We have to be independent. The Greys don't want us to be anything part of them. We have to be on our own. So if you're a religious person watching this, I ask you, please read the fucking... Sorry, can't curse. Read the Bible. Read it. And try to seriously... Or read whatever it is you follow. And seriously try to define what it's really talking about. And try to figure out for yourself what you should know and not believe. We shouldn't need to believe in anything. We should only know.